prevent things like revelations from happening, I believe that they've removed that knowledge from us so that we can't push back once we get to the point where we are. Yeah.
Now, to be fair, can we also apply the same thought process to the Dead Sea Scrolls? That maybe that is a created story as well? Because if you look at the official narrative, they were found by these Bedouin shepherds, which means they just had these nomadic people wandering through, and they're like, oh, look, I found these Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, to be fair, according to them, there was a team of archaeologists that went with them. But I think we have to put the same discernment to that story as we do everything else.
We have to put that discernment with anything that's hidden from us. Anything that we have not had full, anything that you haven't touched with your own hands, we have to have discernment. Do you know what I mean? Like if you haven't been to the place where those Dead Sea Scrolls are displayed and you haven't looked at them and touched them and felt them, I don't feel like we can really not question those things. I totally agree with that statement. And I don't not question anything. Everything has a question on it. Everything, even the stuff that I've found proof of, right? Like, because who knows if that, and that's the snake. That's the snake continuously eating its tail, right? Like that's one of the traps that they get you in, is never being able to settle on anything that's true. Because it's constantly altered, or it's constantly changed, or there's new information being added that's been hidden from us over time that we're discovering and adding to our pile of evidence, and then we get a fuller picture, right?
Yep. And then, you could go back to the Shroud of Turin as well, right?
100%. And those things, I believe those things have magical connotations to our existence. I believe that those, and whether or not it's a good magic or whether or not it's a devil magic, I don't know, because we've never had access to these things. But there are lots of artifacts, and there's lots of rumors of artifacts and lost scrolls and books and stuff and scripts and stuff that we should have access to as human beings. We should have access to, that are in the vaults, that are hidden from us on purpose.
Yeah. So Bradley, his way of connecting everything together is he thinks Jack Parsons opened a portal for the UFOs, fallen angels, Nephilim, demons, etc.
I've actually read that, and I read that he died before anyone could shut it. So, and the rule of the law is that the ritual that he did, the rule is that you have to use the same blood to shut the portal as that opened it, and he died in a freak accident the day after or something, the ritual.
That's really interesting. Now, of course, JPL, it was originally called Jack Parsons Laboratories. The story goes that he was too wild, too reckless, so they fired him. So now it's called Jet Propulsion Laboratories. They always kept the JPL, which I always thought that was pretty interesting. But he was the one that founded JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratories, which still today is very much alive and kicking out there in California, out there by Caltech.
Oh, and it would be, because they pass these things down generationally, right? So when he did these rituals, when he did this ritual on, say bringing the Whore of Babylon forth, just to do a full circle, he would have continued those rituals according to the birth of that child. Right? So it's not like it would have finished. It's a generational thing. They would have, the amount of stuff that these people put these kids through when they're young to break them and to bring forth these things is horrific. Can I just say?
Yeah.
And it's also, it leaves me speechless, because people still want to look at, say, the Aleister Crowley side of things, and we really do live in a world right now where "do what thou wilt" is the whole of the law to some people.
Yeah,
that is literally what we're living under, and I don't know if people actually gain the full hyperbole of that statement until you live in times like we do right now, where they're killing live babies within like 30 days of coming out of mum. They can kill this baby without pain medication in New Zealand now as an abortion, and it's listed as an abortion 30 days after birth. What?
Yeah. I just
How
brought
is
that up
this
today on my
okay?
radio show. That's one of, if you look at all the bills that California is trying to pass this week, they'll all have to do with either abortion or air quotes here, guys, transgender rights for children. Every last one of them.
And then comes, so there was two things that were pointed out in Davos this year for the World Economic Forum, okay? And everyone got a little bit lost because everyone was talking about the COVID stuff. Big, fat, freaking distraction, in my opinion, because what the WEF announced at that meeting and what they confirmed with each other was that they were going to focus on the children and the climate. They're coming for your children. They have been coming for the kids for a long time, but now they've got them in their sights because they know that people like me and you are out here waking up. And I say waking up loosely because me and you could be anyone. Anyone could go and start a show and start talking about this stuff and find the exact same stuff that we do because it's all the truth.
Yep. There's this whole thing, this time period is so interesting. Post just those first few years after World War II, where Israel became a state. They found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then of course Jack Parsons were doing these things. He took over the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was the OTO, which was people, you got to understand, this went back to the Ashkenazi, the German Jews way back in the day. We're talking people like Karl Kellner, Franz Hartmann, and all these people, and it was later picked up by the one and only Aleister Crowley. And then after Crowley died, they kind of went a couple different ways. But here's the thing that I always forget about is this ODO or OTO, excuse me, was
Ordo Templi Orientis.
Yes, is a branch of Freemasonry.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's associated with Freemasonry.
OTO is huge here. OTO, if you want to get knocked off your block, we talk about the OTO in Australia.
Let's hear it.
No, I'm saying if you want to get your head put on a chopping block, we talk about the OTO here.
So the OTO to Australia is like George Soros to Hungary? Like if you mention his name?
On steroids. On steroids.
Wow, no kidding.
On steroids. Yeah.
And what's the reason for that?
Listen, they might be based here. It's quite possible, and from the stuff that I've learned, that they might be based here, that this is a base camp for whatever they do, and that they have infiltrated our government on multiple levels over here.
The one thing that we need to keep in mind, all these things, whether it just be straight Satanism or these Baal worshippers, Freemasonry, and all these spells, in order for them to harness the power of evil, sacrifice has to be involved, correct?
Yep. In whatever form it's called for and whatever ritual, yeah, because it all differs, yeah. Could be animal, could be human, could be sex, could be anything. It could be pee, it could be fecal matter, it could be anything, and it just depends on the spell and what energy they're trying to invoke.
Yeah, and you always talk about the numbers, and again, going back to Normandy, 6/6 at 6:30, and then of course the perfect the killing of the king on 11/22/1963. Everybody's always quick to say, yeah, 11/22/33, but I think the other thing that people always forget is that powerful 19 number, which is very important to the Ashkenazi Jews. If you take 1, 9, 6, and 3, that adds up to 19. So you're talking COVID-19, 19 hijackers.
1, number 1.
Yep, 1963, 1963, that's 19. So not only do you get the 33, but you get the 19. And that was the day they sacrificed the king. And then, of course, we all know all the numerology that goes to 9/11. That's why people laugh at me sometimes. Anytime there's an event, one of the first things I do is I look for the numbers to see if there's any ritualistic meanings to them.
One thing that you've really brought forward in me, and I'm really thankful for, is looking at numbers again, because I got really, really over looking at numbers. Like the numbers, they're so repetitive that it's hard not to be aware of them. Right? It was like looking up, okay, so look, I'm going to use this as an example. When we were talking about Marina Abramovich last night, trying to find some more info on her and just like digging up her bio and stuff, what did we find in the horoscope thing that had been written for her? She was
Oh, that's
born. So that table, George, is made from the exact moment she was born. Do you remember when we were talking about at the beginning of the show how these people choose these times and places on purpose? At the exact moment they could have induced her to be born from her mother, because they have that technology. They do it every single day now. Why couldn't they have cut her out at that exact moment? Do you see what I'm saying? And one of her main houses in her astrological chart is at the 3.33 degrees. That to me was just a massive symbol right over her head, because she would be involved in those things, right? She would know those things.
That's
and
right.
They would know those things. They did it on purpose. So one thing I'm very thankful for, actually, like, listening and doing the things, like, I lost contact with the numbers, and you've brought it all back to the front. And let me just say, I've slept less than I have in years because of it. So thanks.
You're welcome.
I love it.
You know what else is funny? I'm glad you mentioned that. Prince William, he was induced on June 21st, 1982,
Mm-hmm.
summer solstice, which is a very, very important date for these people.
And the sacrifice that would have led to his birth would have been phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely phenomenal. And can I just say, I found something really interesting as well, back in reference to Thelema, like the art. Well, I say the art loosely. Actually, no, I don't, because the art that's exactly what it is. It's an art. It's a magical art. Thelema, I was reading in one of their little... They've got Thelema-pedias, okay? So if you want to find out anything about the art of Thelema, feel free to just Google it. They've got full organizations dedicated to it, and you can find lots of interesting information without delving into their readings, which is what I like to do. I don't like reading their spells. But I found it interesting how much they reference the Book of Thoth, because the Book of Thoth is one of the lost books, isn't it? And they refer to so hang on. She rides astride the beasts. In her left hand she holds the reins, representing the passion which unites them. In her right she holds aloft the cup, the holy grail aflame with love and death. In this cup are mingled the elements of the sacrament of the Aeon. That's from the Book of Thoth. You muted yourself.
No, I was asking, my little one was over there. I was just checking on her.
So it's the Aeon. I've never heard that before.
That's interesting. According to Manetho, the Egyptian historian, he wrote over 36,000 books.
What?
That's what it says. That Manetho said that Thoth wrote 36,525 books.
That's mind-boggling. So
that is...
there was an interesting, so part of the Ancient Future. Do you remember me talking about the Ancient Future series? The Tracy Harding books that I talk about a lot?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So interestingly, she talks about, so she actually hits on the Book of Thoth in that, and so like it's a reincarnated person is part of the family or whatever, the son, and he grows up and he it's hard to explain. It's really in depth, but basically he goes to like one of these ruins in Egypt, and he opens up his energy centers, and it unlocks his like soul code. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know. You'd have to read the books to get the whole meaning of it. But basically, it unlocks his astral locks that we've been locked with in this realm, right? So like we can't function. It's like what I talk about, like the frequency fence and stuff, right? So it's like the frequency fence on him is broken, and in that moment, he absorbs all of the knowledge of Thoth, right? And in that moment, the way it explains it, it makes sense that there's so many writings. But also, how would you transfer that amount of information without having a computer of some description to do it? Can I ask? I'm asking you a genuine question, because if you got a transference thing, like we talk about even 25 years ago, you remember dial-up, what it took to download an album?
Yeah. Even
Like,
for a song, it would take a couple minutes.
Right. So now, as an author, as someone that knows fellow authors, go and ask them how long it takes to write a book, and